Ever wanted to play an involuntary game of the floor is lava? Well, with your enemies at least anyway, you can stay on the ground if you like. This Strand Titan build might be just what you're looking for. Kia ora e te whānau. It's Gio here, and straight off the bat I want to say a massive thank you to all those who watched and liked and commented on the Ash and Wake video. It's awesome to have all that support from you guys and gives me a bit more confidence to produce more videos like this. So hopefully I can keep that up and continue to produce content that you like and engage with and enjoy. I'd actually be interested to know how many people have tried out the Ash and Wake build since I put that up. Let me know down in the comments or just flick me a message. It'd be good to see. So let's kick off the new one, shall we? Most of the gameplay in the background is from the Grandmaster versions of the new Hypernet Current strike on Neomuna, as well as Europa's Glassway strike. So just so you know, even with my limited skill, I managed to complete both of these GMs with this build, so if I can do it, you can do it too. Let's get the easiest part of this build out of the way first, shall we? We're using Strand, so our exotic armor piece of choice is a Bayant Leap. It certainly elevates this build. I say choice, but this is currently the only Strand exotic for Titan that we have, so it's not much of a choice. The Bayant Leap are pretty straightforward. It grants Dranger's Lash, 2 more strands, and allows for all 3 to seek more aggressively. It also allows these strands to travel further, and it also gives you Woven Mail on suspend. What's Dranger's Lash, I hear no one asking? Well, thanks for not asking, because that leads us nicely into our subclass setup. For the things we have a choice over, I mean, you have a choice over a jump as well, but yeah, that's up to you. I'm not going to comment on that. For grenade, I'll be using the shackle grenade, and for barricade, rally barricade. The choice for which I'll elaborate in a bit. We're stuck with the slicey melee as well, so there's nothing new there. Looking forward, there's nothing in the pipeline for new melee attacks, so we'll stick with this one for now. There is a new aspect called Flashette Storm coming with Season of the Deep, but I don't think that's going to change this build overly. So check back again once Season of the Deep releases, and maybe I'll have updated this a little bit. As for the super, again, we have only one, but it's pretty good, and we'll talk about that later as well. So let's dive into the more nitty gritty of it, shall we? We have 2 choices for aspects, not much of a choice. So we'll be going with Dranger's Lash and Into the Fray. First of all, Dranger's Lash sends out a strand to suspend, pretty simple, does what it says in the can. With a Bayant Leap, we get those 3 strands that do more for us. It's kind of the crux of this build, and you'll see why in a sec. For the second, I think we'll choose... let's go with Into the Fray. Destroying a Tangle gives Woven Mail and melee regen. Again, simple and effective. This also gives us 4 fragment slots, so let's chuck in some stuff, shall we? As far as fragments goes, there are quite a lot that you could actually slot into this build to change things up as you need. I'd stay away from things that relate to threadlings though, because we're not really going to lean into that. However, if you want to lean into threadlings, then go for it. I typically find that warlocks have more synergy with threadlings though, rather than Titan. So what fragments are we actually using in this build? I like to start with Thread of Mind, which gives us 20% class ability back when we suspend an enemy. This 20% is more energy back than using the typical utility kickstart mod. With 2 stacks of armor charge, you gain 16.7% back, and with 3, you gain 23.4. But we don't need them, because we have Thread of Mind. This also applies to our grenade too, which is even more useful seeing as we can chain them both together. As for number 2, next I'm going to throw in Thread of Generation, which gives us grenade energy, get this, whenever we deal damage. Not when we kill anything, just dealing damage grants grenade energy. Oh, and based on the testing I've done, the quicker you deal damage, the more energy you get, and if you unravel the target, it's even better. So far we've got 2 aspects and 2 fragments, and we've got 2 ways to suspend and 2 ways to get ability energy back for all of the things that suspend all of the enemies. Shall we add more to this? Next up, I like Thread of Isolation. This gives us a severing burst on rapid precision hits, and Sever will debuff the enemies, which means they will do 50% reduced damage for 8 seconds. That's damage done to you by 50%. This in particular pairs well with Suspend, as I find it easier to hit things in the head when they're not moving. Staying alive will be much easier when the enemies don't do as much damage as well, which is particularly useful for champs. And we're going to talk about that in a sec. I feel like I've said that a lot so far, but there will be a payoff to them, I promise. For the last fragment slot, it's kind of up to you what you use. But typically I use Thread of Warding, which gives us Woven Mail on orb pickup. The real bonus to this fragment is picking up an orb refreshes the 10-second timer. Also, it gives us a different way of getting Woven Mail, which is great for survivability. Did I mention what Woven Mail is? This is a 60% damage reduction for 10 seconds. And with Thread of Warding, this gives us a way to get it again, and a way to refresh it. I did want to mention here as well a few other fragments that come in handy in times. Thread of Propagation will be great next season, as I'm guessing we're probably not going to have Allied Unraveling to grant us Unraveling rounds, so using Propagation to get Unraveling rounds might be the way to go. Thread of Transmutation can be handy to create tangles on weapon final blows while you have Woven Mail, but it still doesn't bypass the tangle cooldown, and I think we're perfectly capable of creating tangles once every 15 seconds anyway, so feels like a bit of a waste. If you want more melee energy to chain all of your abilities together, Thread of Fury grants melee energy on damaging an enemy with a tangle. If you need more orb generation, then Thread of Wisdom grants an orb when you defeat a suspended enemy, but it has to be with a precision kill, and in higher end content, precision kills might be a little trickier to come by. It also has an 8-second cooldown between orb generation, so you can't generate more than one every 8 seconds. So that's kind of the core of the build, really. These next bits are kind of the icing on the build cake. Let's sprinkle in some stats, shall we? They're fairly straightforward. We run similar ones all the time, so it's not going to change up too much. As far as the stats go, I'm using the usual 100 resilience, but keep in mind that the Thread of Warding gives us a -10 to resilience, so you plan for like 110 resilience if you can. If not, 90, still good. You can have Woven Mail, 60% damage reduction for 10 seconds. Still enough resilience, I think. Following that, I'd usually go with Recovery just to get your health back quicker, get you back into the action, and maybe not hiding behind a rock for as long. You could also go with High Discipline here as well to suspend more things if it's coming back slightly slowly with Thread of Generation, but Thread of Generation also has a -10 to Discipline as well, so you have to kind of plan around that. If you find you're getting your grenade back quickly anyway, it's not really that worth it to spec into Discipline if you get your grenade quickly anyway. So your choice, see how you go, see what feels better. Let's sprinkle on some mods as well, shall we? Just for a bit of fun. We have the usual array of orb generating mods. So for this, I'm using Reaper, Heavy-Handed, and a Siphon mod, depending on which weapons you're using mostly. But if you need to move these things around for any reason, I think I'd take off Heavy-Handed first and then keep Reaper and Siphon, just because Reaper gives you an orb after a kill once you pop your barricade, and we're going to be using barricade to suspend, so kind of a no-brainer. And then, yeah, keep a Siphon on just for whatever flavor weapon you're using, just to give you an extra helping hand. To get more out of the orbs, I've obviously got stacks on stacks as well, so that we gain an extra stack of armor charge for every orb. Always helpful, but not a necessity if you need more space on your legs. And how are we using the armor charges? Well, that's kind of up to you. Personally, I'm going with Surge mods for whatever flavor weapons I'm using. Typically, this is going to be Strand, so I've got double Strand on here. Now, this is a fun one though. I'm also using Proximity Ward to gain Overshield on a finisher. Trust me, this is great. As far as I can find out, the Overshield is a 200 HP Overshield when you finish an enemy, and it lasts for around a second. Now that 200 HP Overshield is basically double your health. Plus, you get a 60% damage reduction while you're finishing an enemy. Plus, we've got 60% damage reduction from Woven Mail, and 50% outgoing damage reduction for Sever, which means we should be able to get out of any close combat situation we find ourselves in. Don't forget to use your melee as well to swipe away. Hopefully it swipes away. Sometimes it swipes towards them, and that's not ideal. Oh, the other thing about Proximity Ward is if you have an Overshield before you go into this, the Proximity Ward Overshield doesn't wipe out that existing Overshield. So once it drops off, you still have your Void or Stasis Overshield that you had before anyway. As for other things in the build, I've also got Focusing Strike on to give ourselves back some class ability energy on melee. I've got Bomber and Impact Induction for grenade cooldown when using barricade and melee respectively. As far as chest mods go, double Void reserves, but feel free to use damage reduction mods if you need. And as for helmet, just to finish it off, usual stuff, Heavy Ammo Finder and Scout. You can also chuck on Special Ammo Finder or Scout as well if you need to, rather than Heavy, but you know, you choose. As for weapons, briefly touched on things, but Quicksilver Storm is great for this. It does take your exotic slot. However, it does great damage, and the secondary grenade firing mode does a lot of damage as well. The new Strand Scout Rifle from Guardian Games, Tyrax Plus, is also another great choice, especially it being a Scout Rifle, allowing you to do a bit more damage at greater ranges, always helpful in something like a GM. Other standout heavies are things like Carax's Distress from the Root of Nightmares, and Circular Logic Machine Gun from Neo Moon are also really good Strand weapons for this. Though, as for heavy, it's really hard to go past Retrofit Escapade if you have it. Otherwise, any fast-firing machine gun, something like Thunderlord, always good at the moment. So, you know, have a little play around with those sort of things and see how you go. You'll see gameplay in the background from Glassway where I'm using Rufus's Distress. It's just a random roll that I picked up from the last time I did Root of Nightmares. So, you know, you can use whatever you feel like, really. As far as the gameplay loop goes, it's fairly straightforward. You find one or multiple enemies. You throw your barricade down, or you throw your grenade down first. Then you shoot them lots while they're suspended. And then you use the other one. And then you go ham with your weapons again, meaning whichever of the other abilities is up, you use it again. The cycle's pretty much never ending. The fact that we can suspend things with our grenade and barricade is really great as well for things like unstoppable champions. While you can suspend unstoppables to stun them, just note that the stun duration is actually shorter than the suspend duration. So you'll notice that while the unstop is suspended, your damage will drop partway through as the stun wears off, though the suspend won't. The bonus to this though is usually once they're back on the floor, they're ready to be stunned again. It's more or less the build. There's a few little bits and pieces here and there that, I mean, sometimes I change out the mods, like I said before. Your super damage is really great against unstoppable champions. Obviously, it also suspends any other enemies that you've got. Use that heavy, suspend them, slice away, and then the hell out of there. So that's it. Hopefully you find this build helpful. Hopefully you find it fun. I have been really loving it since it's come out. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up with Strand as they build on this through the year, see what comes next year, and see if we get any new exotics that buff it, change it in different ways. It'd be really interesting to find out. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like. That'd be awesome. Subscribe if you haven't, but otherwise, just know that as long as you're having fun and I've helped you out, that is all I ask for. I'll put a Destiny Item Manager link down in the description below, so if you want to check this out for yourself, go for it. I'll also leave links to Twitch and everything as well, you know, the whole shebang. Let me know how this build goes for you if you try it out. If there's any other little tweaks and bits and pieces that you think are helpful or things that I need to know, just let me know. I'm always happy to find out new bits and pieces. Until next time then, I really appreciate you being here. Hopefully you'll check out the next video. I'm Gio, here Artefact, Kaki Town. Be kind, and I'll see you later.